The Boston Celtics. The big, kind of surprising, but maybe in hindsight not so surprising because it seemed like his voice wasn't carrying in the locker room as much as it used to. Ime Udoka is in as head coach. Brad Stevens, former Celtics head coach, has moved to the front office. And one of the first things he did was trade Kemba Walker, which is kind of interesting. So he went to OKC for a package of Al Horford, Moses Brown, and a 23 second round pick, also number 16 and 25 second. The other semi-significant move, Josh Richardson and then quickly given a 1 year, $12.2 million extension. Then we bring on Chris Dunn as part of a package from part of a three-way trade. This is all getting to be very complicated. Who then, Dunn, moves on to Memphis, I think, for Juancho Hernan Gomez, and Carson Edwards goes along with him, and a 26 second round pick swap. We've got Dennis Schroder coming in at 1 year, $5.9 million. I think we would agree with however you feel about Dennis Schroder. That's probably one of the better value signings of the entire offseason. Enes Kanter comes back. Sam Hauser on a two-way. Marcus Smart gets his extension, 4 years, $76.5 million. Robert Williams, Time Lord, gets his 4 year extension between 48 and 55, depending on I don't know what are there not partial guarantees or incentives in there. But anyway, he's getting paid.
Yeah,
he's getting paid now like a basically top half, of the league starting center, possibly a little better than that. Some trade exceptions coming in: $17.1 million for Evan Fournier, 9.7 in the Tristan Thompson deal, 6.9 for Kemba Walker. And then your notable subtractions we've already kind of covered. Walker, Fournier, Semi Ojeleye is gone, Carson Edwards gone, Tristan Thompson gone. So let's throw it to you. Very busy having read all that offseason for the Celtics. What's your grade for them?
Yeah, I guess I should have. Do you include Moses Brown under notable subtractions? They never really had him. They just moved him back to Dallas. I guess they have enough bigs.
You can put them wherever you want, Dan.
I gave them a B, and I was really low on their offseason to begin with, just because this was before the extensions for Smart and Williams, which I think are both. I think Smart is the one that people were most not reactionary to. 4 years and almost $77 million seems like a lot for him, but this is someone who's shot 37+% on pull-up threes over the past 2 seasons, and he is just a defensive workhorse. He is one of their right now, without question, he's one of their 3 most important players. You keep him at that number. I think if you needed to, you could move him. What I thought was interesting, the Josh Richardson extension, I still believe in Jay Rich, but that just seemed like okay, what are we doing here? I do feel like what Boston has done, and this is what intrigues me, is they've said, some people thought they were going to try and carve out cap space next year. It was never going to happen just based off Tatum and Brown. This was before the extensions of Smart and Williams, but just with the partial guarantee for Horford, it was never going to happen. But now you kind of have Josh Richardson, the 1 year deal. If you keep him through to the next offseason, you've now extended Marcus Smart. You extended Robert Williams III. These are guys that can be repackaged if you want to go after a star. Let's say it's Bradley Beal wants to team up with childhood friend Jason Tatum. I think that they've actively made that decision of saying we want to make sure that we have deals that can be moved where we can match money in addition to sending draft equity. Their package won't look as good unless one of their youngsters hits. That's not part of their offseason. I think the thinking there, though, clearly is. I will say that I still think there's a dearth of shot creation on this team that they did not address, and that they needed to have given more critical thought to before they just dumped Kemba Walker. I get why they did it, to be more financially flexible. I like that they got the trade exception for Evan Fournier, because that kind of looked like they didn't give up a lot to get him. But if you gave up Kemba Walker and then Evan Fournier, your best shot creators now are Schroder, Peyton Pritchard, and Jason Tatum. Like, that's never really been Jaylen Brown's game. Marcus Smart can give you some table setting, but not a ton. And I feel like this offense could still really be bogged down for stretches with the way the team is built. They do have the potential to be a defensive terror when you look at having Horford, who's still kind of switchable for a big. You have Josh Richardson now, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. I am curious to see, are they going to play Al Horford some minutes at the 4? Because you do have Robert Williams there, and you also have Enes Kanter. Are you out on Grant Williams? I'm just very curious to see how the big man rotation shakes out overall. And this is just, it's only tangentially related, but I can't believe Robert Williams got $48 million guaranteed and Rashawn Holmes only got $46.5 million guaranteed from Sacramento. I know there's an age discrepancy there. Rashawn Holmes is much better than Robert Williams III. And I think Robert Williams III could be really good. If his one-on-one defense holds, like he kind of showed at points during last season, that's absolutely huge for the Celtics. Maybe Rashawn Holmes really likes it in Sacramento. This is not related to Celtics, and I don't criticize the deal they gave Robert Williams. That number was not surprising for Robert Williams. It just reinforces how much of a bargain Rashawn Holmes was for Sacramento. So I don't know that Boston got a lot better. I think they're definitely more flexible. There's probably a higher ceiling on their defense, but I don't think that they did anything spectacular this season. I might even downgrade them to a B minus just because of all they kind of gave up in the Kemba Walker trade. But then maybe his knees were worse than we expected because OKC, who never buys out players, bought him out and saved, some money, but now they have this dead money on their books for 2 years that they can't move. The flip side of that argument is maybe they were just afraid Kemba would help them win too many games. But I think Boston is firmly in that B or B minus range for me.
Yeah, I gave him a B as well. And I can totally see, I mean, there's real downside risk. Horford's at an age where the gentle decline could get steep. And I think actually, and Josh Richardson may just never be Miami Josh Richardson again. I think that's, if he's close to that, then man, that's a value signing, like on par with getting Schroder for $6 million. I think, that's a transformative signing. It's a huge value. But the downside risk is there. I think the shot creation is an absolute issue when you just look at their losses, Kemba Walker and Fournier. Like maybe the two, Jason Tatum's a great player, Jaylen Brown's a great player, but you're putting a lot of shot creation onus on them, especially if you're expecting them to be more pick and roll operators like the two guys that they lost. I think you're putting a lot of onus on Horford to move the ball and sort of reinvigorate an offense that, used to run pretty smoothly, but last year stagnated a lot. And I think you're actually asking a lot of Robert Williams too, because I think one of the tantalizing things about him is, he's ambitious as a passer, but for centers, like he can make a lot of passes that big guys can't make. But that's complicated by the fact of, are you going to play him now that you've extended him with Horford, as you alluded to? I don't know. That's hard for me to imagine Horford holding up against a lot of fours as he gets older. So yeah, the shot creation thing is an issue. Just on balance, though, there's the extensions I thought were reasonable, within the reasonable range. The Williams one I think is a little scary potentially. But yeah, the Schroder signing is just that's such a no-brainer for almost any team. I think it's so cheap for a guy that I think is a low-end starter, but he's a low-end starter who does kind of do the downhill stuff that they need. So, I'm good with that. So I think that's a B there.
They desperately still need wing help. They have Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and Josh Richardson. It feels like they need a fourth and fifth wing. Really, this should be a James Ennis team to me. He remains unsigned as of this recording.
Every team's a James Ennis team. Everybody needs the idea of James Ennis on the team. Who's going to supplant James Ennis eventually as who would fit? Because the answer is always James Ennis.
It's Frank Ntilikina.
How much did he sign for?
He remains unsigned, unfortunately, but he is shooting over 40% from three over the past season and a half. So, and gives you defense, 3-and-D wing in the waiting. The other thing, I think you mentioned it, and I do think this was, can definitely nudge up their grade, is that they still have, just from this offseason alone, 3 trade exceptions worth $5+ million. They used part of the one that they got in the Kemba Walker trade, but there's still $5.1 million left. A huge one from Evan Fournier, and then another $9+ million one from Thompson. So they do have avenues to improve the team mid-season. If there's another, Fournier situation approaches like it did last year, are they willing to go, cannonball into the tax to do that? They didn't use their full mid-level exception, so they're not hard capped. So they can do that without really worrying. But is this the team that they want to do that on? But again, having those is certainly, it's definitely a plus. It's not a minus or even a net neutral move. That's big for them.
Last thing before you run down Brooklyn, we can't know this yet, but this offseason grade goes up for me if it turns out, and I hope this isn't the case, that Kemba just can't play anymore. Like that he's just not healthy enough to be a meaningful contributor. And you got off that contract and you got someone that, we don't know because Al Horford got shut down for months and months last year, but someone that at least is mobile, on a night-to-night basis. That we don't know that yet, but if that's something Boston did know and they made that decision, it makes the offseason look a little better.